It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the three owners of the State of the Sports podcast. How are y'all doing today?
Good.
Good.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to start the sports podcast?
I'll take this one. So this is something that we've all talked about for a few years. It was just about getting the equipment. All three of us, Nick is my cousin, and then Morgan is my childhood best friend. So we've literally known each other since all of us together. We're approaching 20 years here. So we've always talked sports with each other. We really liked it. And we came up with our idea for our show where we, debate two athletes against each other. And then we do a weekly wrap up at the end. That's kind of, the main premise of the show. So I think it kind of really transpired. We're coming up on a year anniversary, but this has been in the works for a couple of years, I believe.
Of course, how did you come up with the name of your podcast, SOS, the State of Sports podcast?
Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
So basically, we were trying to come up with like something catchy that people would kind of catch and trend in social media and stuff like that. So we kind of came up with SOS, and then the MNM just is all our initials to start. So it's MNM for Matt, Nick, and Morgan.
Of course, what are some of the main sports that you cover on your podcast?
We cover the big three primarily. We do NFL, MLB, NBA. We get into some of the, as we call it on our show, the obscure sports, with Morgan doing some UFC and golf and boxing and stuff like that. But we primarily stick to the big three sports.
What are some of your favorite memories of covering the NFL side?
I was going to say some of the favorite debates we've had. We've had Brett Favre versus Aaron Rodgers. That was a really fun one. And then my personal favorite one, it's because I won this debate, was Ty Law versus Champ Bailey. That was probably my favorite one that we've done.
That's your favorite, not just pegging on me when the Packers lose?
No, I mean, it is fun when the Packers lose to pick on you, but is that my favorite? No, Morgan, I'm not going to embarrass you like that. Not on our own show, at least.
Of course, when it comes to the football debates, what are some of your most popular football debates besides the Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre debate?
The Ty Law versus Champ Bailey one was definitely a heavy one. I was going to say.
The one with Murph.
Yeah, we did Ronnie Lott versus Ed Reed. That was a big one. We got quite a bit of feedback on that because with Ronnie Lott and Ed Reed, you're looking at, old school versus new school for safeties. I think that was probably the most feedback that we've gotten for a football one.
Of course, when it comes to the NFL side, what are some of your biggest topics that y'all bring up?
So particularly with the NFL, we really try to talk about the games in itself. We will do in our weekly wrap up during the NFL season, we will go through game by game and kind of talk about highlights of that game, stats, just talking about if any major plays happen, any major injuries. And then honestly, at this point, the NFL doesn't have an off season. So even now we're still having NFL topics, whether it's free agent signings, the draft just happened. So it's really kind of just keeping up on all the major news. And especially, Morgan is a diehard Packers fan. He's also a part owner. He's one of the public owners of the Packers fan, as a Packers fan. So it's always fun to get his insight and his optimism on the Packers.
Of course, Morgan, as you are a big Packers fan and stuff, what are your inputs on how they did in the draft?
So in the draft, I was really kind of hoping for a receiver, but the run they had on receivers kind of made it tough. So we went defense, 2 linebackers from Georgia, the D tackle and linebacker. I like them. I think we still should have traded up to get more offensive talent to help Aaron. But I like the picks. Our defense is probably going to be a top 5 defense this year. So
probably top 3, man. They're going to be good.
Of course, when it comes to the NBA side, what are some of y'all's biggest topics that y'all bring up?
Well, Nick, you can answer for you and I.
Yeah, I mean, we're big LeBron James enthusiasts. We've been watching him since high school, so that's definitely a reoccurring theme on ours. Plus my just general overall hatred for Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, but we're slowly moving out of that tunnel.
Of course, Nick, on the MLB side, what are some of the biggest topics that you've covered in the recent years?
We a little bit ago we did a all times list, like a Hall of Fame team versus what we would pick as our starting 9 more non Hall of Famers. And then I think a little while ago we had a pretty big episode on just the Hall of Fame ballot in general and just how much of a joke that has become.
Yeah, with the writers. And then one of the debates we did was Bob Gibson versus Nolan Ryan, which was a good one. You guys really did a good job with that one.
Water, but I don't know what you're talking about.
What are some of the different segments that you have on your show, Matt?
So we, depending on the episodes, we try to be multifaceted. So we do most of our episodes start off with the debate. So then that way, if people just want to listen to the debate, they have that right at the beginning. And then we get into our weekly wrap up where we go, sport by sport. And it's honestly depending on if it's the NFL, we'll have, if it's NFL season, I should say, we'll have, our weekly wrap up of all the games right then. And then we'll get into the other sports kind of that way. But whatever is kind of the main focus, like right now, the NBA, obviously we have the playoffs going on. So that's kind of like normally our leading topic coming out of our debates. We do some live episodes on YouTube. We will do a live stream watching a game where like we'll have, guests and, guests/friends pop into the live stream and just honestly just sit there and, kind of just enjoy each other's company. It's like, I would say like a bar atmosphere, getting together with your buddies and just talking sports.
Of course, besides the main sports of NFL, MLB, and NBA, do you cover any of the women's sports or any other sports and stuff?
So I'm a big UFC, MMA, boxing, golf fan. So I kind of pay attention to those a lot. I play golf, so I watch a lot of golf. Women's sports, not as much. Just, I don't know. It's not our thing. We don't know it as well, so we kind of just try and stay away from it. But we do, mainly me, bring in the MMA if there's big fights for UFC, or if there's a big boxing fight, we'll bring that in at the end of the episode, stuff like that.
Of course, Morgan, as you're a big UFC fan, what are some of your inputs on the UFC side and some of the big fights, such as this weekend's?
So this weekend, Oliveira missing weight is very shocking. He's normally a great weight cutter and normally doesn't miss weight. So having the title fight for the lightweight where only Justin Gaethje can win it and not Oliveira, even if he wins, makes it tough. Rose Namajunas is also on this card. And then the Michael Chandler fight versus Tony Ferguson is going to be the best part of the fight on the card.
Of course, Morgan, as you cover UFC, who are some of your biggest and favorite fighters that you've seen over the years?
So currently fighting, I got Sean O'Malley is probably one of my favorites right now. Conor McGregor has been a big favorite just because he's electric to watch. And then old school is kind of George St. Pierre is one of my guys. And probably those three are my big guys. And I was a big Cain Velasquez fan too when he was fighting.
Of course, starting off with you, Matt, what are some of your favorite memories and moments of the podcast so far?
Honestly, really just like the laughs. Like we really enjoy each other's company. Obviously making fun of Morgan for the Packers having an absolute debacle in the playoffs is fun. It's just really enjoying each other's company. The debates, they do get heated, which is, it's good to see that like side of people where you're actually showing like I was emotionally invested in the Ty Law versus Champ Bailey debate because I really like Ty Law. I grew up, he was my favorite player. So I was emotionally invested in it. And I would say things along that line.
Morgan?
Sorry, repeat the question again.
What are some of your favorite memories and moments so far covering the podcast?
Big ones. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers, one of our first episodes was the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre debate, just being a Packers fan. And the bigger one I was a fan of is our all-time like sports movies that we did. That we did a whole draft for that episode, which was awesome. We went one by one and picked, I think we did 5 movies.
5, yeah, I did a starting 5.
Movies. So that was a fun episode too.
Stan?
Yeah, Morgan picked the one I was going to go with. The movie draft was really fun. We also got into a Derek Jeter and Cal Ripken debate, which I thought was really good. Those are 2 of our favorite players. And like Matt said, just the laughs. I think that our show definitely brings like a certain level of satire to it, even though it is serious and we do love sports and we're serious about the stuff we're talking about and passionate about it. But there's like a light side of it too, where we'd like to rag on teams, even though we might not be entirely truthful in the stuff we're saying when we're making fun of them.
Of course, what is something that you learned now that you didn't know before starting the podcast?
Ooh, I would say working around three people's different schedules. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we have going right now, because obviously we all have lives. Morgan actually, his day job right now is actually a night job. He works nights. And then, Nick and I have jobs. I work from home. Nick works in a warehouse. So it's just figuring out the schedule to get us all three of us together every weekend to make sure we make time for it. But we really, I would say all three of us do a good job of making time for it, trying to be on time and punctual and bringing, being prepared for debates, because there's a lot of research that goes in when you're going to do a debate. I think for me, it's at least, an hour or two that I'll like put, dig my nose into the internet and try to get the information that I want for the debate.
Morgan, what is something that you learned now that you didn't know beforehand?
So for me, it's coming up with like interesting topics to cover, or because I do a lot of the weekly rundown, and I'll set it up and send the list out to them. So trying to find what the main things happening in each sport is. If I need to go pay attention to like the women's conference, women's national championship, or stuff like that, little things like that, trying to find good ways to get us a good topic and have a good episode.
Dan, is there anything that you learned now that you didn't know before starting the podcast?
I think the research aspect of it, like we can all sit in a bar next to each other in a room and like debate sports, and there's really nothing to back it up except like the honor system. But once you start really getting into the numbers and somebody's coming onto the show, like we've had guests, whatever, that really want to win the debate and stuff like that, you really have to come guns blazing with some of those numbers. So getting deep into them, like Matt said, is definitely something that we had to put more time into, and we didn't really think we were going to have to do that at the beginning because we don't know enough about it to debate it. But when you really want to get down to it, a good debate, you have to do like a lot of good research.
Who are some of the guests and the notable guests that you've had on your show?
So some of the notable guests we've had on is John Smith, who is a rapper. He lives out in Los Angeles, California. And then another one is a friend of his named Nocturnal. He's also a rapper. He's the one we did the Ronnie Lott versus Ed Reed debate with. And then we've interviewed Axel Alfori. He's a former UMaine defensive back. I believe, I can't remember the name of his YouTube page right now off the top of my head.
Team Island.
Team Island. It's spelled EYELAND on YouTube. He's got like over 10,000 subscribers. He's a high school football coach now. He really teaches kids, techniques for playing defensive back, trying to like get kids to the next level, which is really awesome to see somebody of his skill level, because I got to watch him play live. He was really close to like making it to that, that next step to give back to the game like that. And then I would say finally, the last guest is probably one of our more important guests is Carlton Charles, who is a fighter, fights amateur MMA. He's one of our really good friends, one of my best friends, growing up. And it's fun to get a fighter's perspective on, MMA stuff.
Of course, Matt, what was it like obviously having the UMaine defensive back come on the show?
It was really interesting because Morgan and Nick hadn't met him before, and I had that relationship with him. But he really, he came in, we got to interview him. And I think within the first, 2 to 3 questions, he was super comfortable. And we actually got to ask him a question that like kind of took him aback, which was like, what is your, favorite sports moment of all time that you had in your life? And his answer was something like he won, a conference championship at UMaine. It was something that you wouldn't expect. He said it was when I was in 8th grade, I scored the game-winning touchdown in our last game of the year. And it's like, that's, from somebody that reached that high of a level playing, Division I football, for that to be his answer it's pretty awesome.
Morgan, what was it like obviously having a MMA fighter come on the show?
Oh, it was awesome. I got to learn more in depth of like what it's like to go through like the weight cut and how intense that actually is with all the water, the hydrating, the dehydrating, how just hard that is. And then just kind of getting inside the mind of like, how do you get through wanting to hit and knock somebody out?
Of course, Dan, who were some of your favorite interviews that you've done?
I liked when Carlton came on. That was an interesting look at seeing what he goes through to get ready for a fight. I didn't realize it. Like Morgan said, the weight cutting is like you're almost killing yourself. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's
crazy. That was a pretty interesting perspective on that side of it.
What are some of y'all's future plans with the podcast, the State of Sports podcast?
So I think, I'll kind of speak for all three of us. I think we want to do more live streams where we interact with, the people that do listen to us live, more often. I think that's something we're really going to focus on coming up here into the summer, and then in the fall with, football coming around the corner. It's obviously difficult, with, 3 different schedules trying to get us all 3 on. But honestly, I think we'll have if we're in a pair, if it's honestly just one of us doing a live stream, just talking with people, I think that's where we're going to try to get into. I do think, I'm sure we've kind of talked about this. We do have a gambling episode. I think we'll keep that going for the NFL season. We would put out a gambling episode once a week, kind of just making, a lock of the week, over, under, and then an upset of the week. So I think that's something we could continue and kind of grow into other sports as well.
Morgan, what advice would you give somebody looking to start their own sports podcast?
I would give, if they're looking to start their own podcast in specifically sports, be passionate about it. You want to have, I'm very emotional when it comes to my teams, but I think it's good for the podcast having that just passion for whatever it is, your sports team, a certain sport, a certain player. You just want to have that certain passion that makes you want to have a good episode and research and be knowledgeable about what you're talking about.
Stan, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think Morgan hit it. Just definitely be passionate about what you're talking about and stuff, because people can definitely tell. And I think the other advice I would give was just for us to, it took me a couple episodes, just pretend nobody's got a camera on you. Just talk to each other. That's when the best stuff comes out, when you're just joking around.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So for me, my perspective on it is I handle, getting the episodes uploaded, cut, all that. Get the proper equipment, make sure you have everything that you need in order to record a podcast. Pay for the Zoom. This is a great way to do podcasts. I literally record the file off of it and upload it that way. So I'd say proper equipment. And then, like these guys said, just be passionate about it. Talk about stuff that you're genuinely interested in, because it resonates with people. When I'm sitting here getting upset about Ty Law versus Champ Bailey, or Morgan's sitting there talking about the Packers, whether it's good, bad, or not talking. There was an episode after the Packers lost. He literally just sat on the episode and didn't talk at all. Just sat there. So it's just, just be passionate about it and try to find a niche as well. Like us, our niche is doing debates. And obviously it's kind of first takey, but we're not talking about current athletes. We're really focused on mostly retired athletes. So just to have that, I would say find a niche that you can, talk about.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find your podcast at on social media and podcast platforms?
Yep. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook we are at MNM SOS pod. And then we're on Apple Podcasts. It's MNM Presents the State of Sports podcast. We're on Spotify. I believe we're on all major podcast networks.
Thank you again, Matt, Morgan, and Stan, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the State of the Sports podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, all 3 of y'all, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.